Alright guys, we're back again. Homeowner gave us a call in the morning saying he had to wake up in the middle of the night to go find the beeping noise coming from the basement. He thought it was a smoke alarm, but guess what? It ended up being the sump pump crapped out and the battery backup was doing his job and started beeping. So he was lucky enough, he had a battery backup. So once we got there, we started diagnosing the issue and found out that the main pump was shot. The float wasn't working and the pump was smoking all over the place. So he was lucky enough that he had a battery backup. If not, he would probably had a flood in the basement and he would have been calling someone else. So here we are. We start taking everything apart. Once I took everything apart, I started noticing a little situation going on there. The main pump had a check valve, but the battery backup didn't. So what does that mean? When the main pump turned on, it used to go to the battery backup pump and recirculate the water. So the pit was filling up with the same water it tried to discharge. So we put a check valve on the battery backup pump and we started piping everything else up. We cut all the PVC out because we needed to put a new pump in there. And another thing we found out is we let it sit without a pump inside the pit for about 45 minutes. The water table in this house was about 10 inches in the pit. The water table did not change in 40 minutes to an hour that we were working. So the pump originally was set to the wrong height. The pump was set too low and the pump homeowner says keep on turning on every 20 minutes. That's because the pump was set at the wrong height. So I always use Zoeller pumps and I use a Zoeller stand which I could adjust the height of the pit of the pump in the pit. The way it works is the stand has a couple of sockets on the bottom that you could use 1.5-inch pipe or 2-inch pipe to adjust the height of the pump. So in this case, once I measured everything up, I determined I had to raise the pump up about 3 inches so the float would turn on when the water table went higher. So once I adjusted that, I determined that length, I started piping everything up. As you can see there, I use a swing check valve for all my pumps. It works a lot better and it's real quiet when it shuts down. So as you can see here, the little legs I'm using for the stand, and I start cutting the PVC for the check valve. I had barely enough room to fit the check valve underneath the lid. So I fit the check valve underneath the lid right above the pump. You can see the check valve right above the pump. Do not forget to drill a 3/16 of an inch hole on the pipe below the check valve. It's, if you read the instructions, majority of the pumps need this weep hole. Don't forget guys, if not the pump will crop out at the end and it won't work correctly. Okay, so once I draw that out, I put it inside the pit and we start mocking it up. I started noticing that it's going to be a little difficult to try to get the two pumps in there and the lid to work and line up correctly. I did not want to drill the lid because that doesn't look professional in my books. So I had to keep on moving around and figure out a way to fit the two pumps in there. I finally found a way to fit the two pumps in there. So it was real tight, but I managed to work it out. So I figured out that the pump had to be as close as possible to the wall. But the good thing with the battery backup pump, the check valve is not connected to the pump. I could adjust the float to wherever I would like. So I start piping everything up. As you can see here, I use pressure fittings. Anytime you deal with sump pumps, sewer ejectors, or anything like that, try to use pressure fittings. On a sewer ejector, I use regular DWV because you want it to flow good. Or better yet, you could use pressure fittings like 45s, but make them long turn. So glue two 45s to make a 90. That makes it a good sweep. All right. So anyhow, we start piping up here, and as you can see here, the existing pipe is that gray pipe up there. It is PVC, but they ran 1.25 inches. For every sump pump, I always like running 1.5 inches. That's the minimum. But somebody ran 1.25 inches, so we had to adapt to that. So what I did is I glued a bushing, 1.5 by 1.25 bushing, and I went from there. Then I used 45s again to make it a lot better, water smoother when the pump turns on instead of using 90s. So Once I lined everything up there, I figured I had to do a pretty big offset there, but it wasn't too difficult. So once I measured everything up, I glued that up. And then we have to determine to set the height of when the water is going to turn on for the battery backup. Like I said, it's a good thing that I could adjust the float to wherever I like. That's the little float that I see right there. So once I adjust the float, I adjust it so if the main pump ever fails, which means if they lose power or the float fails or the pump just doesn't turn on and the water starts raising above the main pump, the battery backup will turn on. That's where you want to set that float to, right above the main pump. Not too high and not too low, just right. So once I set that, I got to fix all these wires, and I get a couple zip ties and I zip them all up, and we plug everything up and everything looks like it's working good. Don't forget to cut your zip ties, make them nice and pretty. So once everything's all tidy up, I usually do manually. I run it about 2 times manually, or I fill it up with a hose. Once you check it out, then you put that lid on and you call it a day. All right. If you live in North Jersey, need some plumbing work done, residential or commercial, let us know. See you on the next one. See ya.